welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero, and I'm a licensed therapist.
I'm Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but what I am this week is thankful. We made it. It is Love is Blind Season 8 reunion.
Yes.
The season is officially over. Woo! Not gonna lie, this was a hard season to get through. What I will say is that at least the reunion had a little bit of energy. I think that's what we were lacking this season, and at least they gave us something. That being said, still not as exciting as some of the past seasons.
Absolutely, yeah. The season itself felt like such a dud, and I know it's not just us saying it. It's gotten a lot of criticism for how political it is, the way it was edited and put together, and and while there's a time and place for that, I don't necessarily want that to be the sole purpose of my entertainment, particularly in the world that we're living in right now. I'd like a little break from that. And I just, that added an extra layer of like, oh, this was exhausting, on top of the fact that it was boring.
Yeah, I mean, people tune into these types of shows to get a reprieve from their day-to-day lives. Right now we live in a very polarized and heavily charged politically environment. And to sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to enjoy some TV and just get force-fed the level of agenda this show had this season, I think was really off-putting for a lot of people. And even people that I know that agree heavily with the messaging that the show was presenting this season, even they were pretty turned off. But we made it. Hopefully, all the criticism and the relatively low ratings will help production maybe change course for season 9, but we will see. As we know, season 9 has already been filmed, so maybe they go back to the editing room and rethink some of their choices before that. But
yeah, well, I don't know that it's been filmed. It might be, but we know that it will happen in Denver, which is cool. We'll see what Denver has to bring.
Yeah, it's slated right now for September, October of later this year is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So no dates, specific dates yet. I don't believe. But anyway. Why don't you tell the people what they should be doing before we get too deep into it?
Well, as you mentioned, we are here talking about Love is Blind Season 8 reunion, and we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, please be sure to hit that like button at the bottom of this video and subscribe. I know I say this every time, but it is such a small thing. Just that little tap of your finger or of your cursor goes a really long way, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, please also hit that bell icon so that you're alerted anytime we post new content to the channel.
Okay, so any other opening thoughts that you have?
I have a handful of kind of overarching themes for both the show, the season, and this episode.
Okay.
The show in general. I do not understand why any male ever would show up and sign up for this show. It is mind-boggling to me. Every season thus far has been basically the same thing. We understand that production really wants this show to be a very, female-first, female-empowered show, and that's what we get every single season. And they go out of their way in a lot of ways to edit in that direction. It's just mind-boggling to me why a lot of these guys would continue to put themselves through it. And I if we recap seasons of this in the future, I'm just going to come with the prior understanding that every guy on the show must either be a fame chaser or a complete idiot. Because there's really no other reason why a man would sign up for the show.
Well, I was going to say the reasons would be it's to get famous, or they're either ignorant or arrogant enough to think that they can beat the edit.
Yeah, and I think somebody like a Dave,
or they maybe really want to get married, but again, maybe that's more in the ignorant.
I think that's more in the ignorant category. Yeah. Vanessa and Nick, better, not good.
It's been bad. Where I'm like, let me give them a huge round of applause.
They almost got there a couple times. Almost.
This was their best showing by far.
They are
by far
horrible.
Horrible
hosts.
They did fine. They stayed out of the way.
They were better, not good, is how I'm putting it. Right. Well, here's the problem. They missed some real layups.
Yeah, they did.
Real layups left and right. Didn't ask questions that we wanted to know. Perfect example, not to speed too far ahead, but Joey is sliding into DMs. Who? We know one person. He said multiple people. Where was the question? Who else? Give me a rundown. You don't want to say names? Fine. You don't have to say names. Give me the composition of men and women. Was it 3 men, 3 women? Suddenly the Madison DM doesn't seem so bad now, but no question ever asked.
Well, even
So
Ben and Sarah. Well, what happened on the Friday night date? Did you break up? What was the conversation?
yeah, exactly. Like these are they're just layup questions right there for the taking, and we got none of it, and it just left the whole show just feeling like incomplete. Like I left the show with more questions than I came in, and I don't think that's the feeling that I should have when we leave this reunion, right? So yeah, Vanessa and Nick, better, not great.
They listened.
They listened.
I have to
I
give
will
them
deny.
that. I have to give them that.
Yep. Getting a little bit character centric. I think Madison displayed and demonstrated what we've been saying all along. She is so desperate to be the center of attention. She got involved in anything she could get involved in. Did not matter, even when it had nothing to do with her. She's jumping from the side. Wait, I was there. Come to me. It was super off-putting. Just the low level of like desperate attention seeking. And yeah, we'll get into her.
Victimization.
Yeah, victimization. We'll get into her later into the pod. But
listen, my overall thought is that the women looked worse.
Oh, I think that's So here's the thing. The men all looked very cautious and wooden, which is exactly what you'd expect the men to look in a situation like this. The women it felt like they have been stewing for a year and they came ready to fight, and they've been talking this over. So
there are a bunch of women scorned, but they all broke up with the men.
And this is the crazy thing. Like, it doesn't even make sense logically. Like, most of the women, sure, you have a right to be maybe a little annoyed here or there, but the level of vitriol, it was just like, where is this coming from? Like, I don't really understand. It's been a year and nothing you're saying was really that bad. And the guys have complaints too, but the guys are just keeping their mouths shut, for obvious reasons. And I think that this actually illustrates a really interesting dynamic between men and women. I say all the time, like when there's a breakup, the man is always going to be the bad guy because the women talk about the breakup, the men don't. A man walks into a room, hey, you still dating so-and-so? Nope, we broke up. Cool. All right. That's it. And we move on with life. We don't really talk about it. Women talk about these things. They're sitting at the dining room table. They're sitting at brunch. They're sitting, with their families at holidays, and they're having to, they're more social creatures, so they want to talk about it more. Two, I do think from a societal perspective, women are asked more frequently about their relationships than men are, mainly because they're being asked it by other women, right? And so I think all of this builds to a point where these women have been thinking about these relationships and having to replay them and relive them over and over and over again. And then it comes out on TV and they get the edit that they get. And now suddenly they are walking in as scorned women. And a lot of it didn't play well, in my opinion. For the record, I thought most of the men looked awful as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, relatively speaking, the men did exactly what you'd expect of men. Like, the relationship ended. I'm over. I'm done with it.
I honestly think, aside from Nick and Vanessa, the winners of this reunion, and we might disagree on this, were Dave and Lauren.
We're going to come back to Dave and Lauren. I think everybody is getting Dave wrong here. But I don't want to get too far ahead. I think my statement about Dave weeks ago still holds, and I think everybody is giving Dave a pass.
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm just saying.
No. I don't believe that his stock should have rose after this at all.
Well, I don't think it got worse as others.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think just about everybody. You know what? Let's just get into it. Shall we? Let's not talk in innuendo.
Sure. Okay. So let's start off with the couple that really there isn't much to say because everything sounds great. Daniel and Taylor. We kind of meet them again. They look great. They look happy. And we hear a little bit about what they're up to.
That little jeweled bling jumpsuit. That
she's so cute.
She's like whoa, okay. Yeah. We're really coming to sparkle.
Yeah, good for her. And she shined, inside and out. And he had his own. He was confident too, and I thought that was cool to see. And we hear a little bit about their life, of course, and that they're really kind of blending their families, which was nice to hear. But the biggest thing that happened in the last year with Daniel and Taylor is this tattoo that he got.
Okay. This is some psycho shit right here. I mean, are you kidding me? It was a block tattoo of her eyes. Now, look, I have a high school buddy of mine who got like handprints of his kids on his back. And they're literally just like giant black handprints on his back. And I was like, I don't know, dude, that's a little aggressive. I get why you did it, but like, I don't know, maybe an outline of the hands, these just giant black things. That's like how I felt about this tattoo. I'm like, if it was maybe smaller, if it wasn't like a perfect rectangle, if maybe the nose wasn't in there, if, I don't know, like put it in color, maybe that would have helped. Like, but the whole thing was just like, I'm out on this tattoo.
I'm just hoping that he asked her before she did it.
Imagine he came home and just like, hey, honey, look. Also, the location. How do you feel about the location?
It was odd. Like,
I mean, kind of
because it was on his
pectoral,
right hand side. Like, it's not even over his heart or like.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a fan of pectoral tattoos. I don't know. I got to think about this, but I don't think I'm a fan of pectoral tattoos.
Listen, they're kind of quirky in their own way. As long if she's good with it, then who are we to judge? But that was not what I was expecting.
Yeah. Also, I know you said that they didn't lose any steam. But between his mustache, which I hated,
well, it was kind of a beard, but that
was weird. It was good, and he always sort of had like some scruff, but like. It just felt like his mustache was very prominent in this episode, and I wasn't digging that.
I mean, there's a particular guy that goes with the mustache, kind of
like my father,
to be funny. No, your dad does it to be a boomer, like kind of like Joey Graziadei has a mustache. Like Jared Freed, the comedian, sometimes has a mustache, and it's like kind of fun. And I could see Daniel being that guy.
That's fair, yeah.
That it's like kind of quirky and fun, but he's not trying to be serious with it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So really, that's it. Nothing else to talk
about.
Good
Happy for you.
Yep. And up to this point, I'm happy because we did not get any Christmas photos or any of that nonsense. So I'm thinking we weaved that. Unfortunately, we do come back at the end of the episode. I know, but I'm happy they put it at the end because at that point, I could start zoning out.
Yeah.
So then we roll into Devin and Virginia. So I want to talk about a woman walking in kind of scorned. I thought Virginia took a really bold tactic here where ultimately she says, hey, Devin did not want to talk about certain things on air, and then proceeds to say, I'm not going to share what those are, but I'm just going to tell you how I feel about these topics that are obviously highly controversial topics that clearly are what he didn't want to talk about. This to me was a real bad look. I don't even know what she was thinking. I don't know what production or who gave her this
Why
advice.
did she need to do that?
The thing with Devin is...
Well, just even like she broke up with him.
Exactly. And this is what I come back to. Devin said yes at the altar.
Right.
He said
he was
yes
the only
at the altar.
guy that's actually said yes and then got rejected and sobbed at the altar.
Yes. And so now it's a year later and it doesn't sound like there's any new. Now there's some stuff that we learn, and we'll talk about in a second. But it doesn't feel like there's been any like new information that's happened over the last year of any meaningful, any meaningful information that's happened over the last year. But a year has passed, and she's this scorned. The feeling I got about this entire situation was, look, Devin. I have defended Devin saying he's not as immature as people think he is. He's immature, but not as immature as people think he is. He looked very immature today. The problem was that Virginia looked equally immature. And she was trying to maintain the high ground and was effectively punching down at him the whole time. And he was basically like, look, we didn't work out. It's fine. Like, I moved on. She moved on. And I don't think that we need to agree on everything. And that was his line. And he wasn't.
Well, his only rebuttal was, I'm a Christian and my faith tells me to believe in universal love or love for all. And that was like his only rebuttal. But I give him so much credit for not taking the bait. But I think that the way that, again, our country is right now, or the way that she was kind of setting up this argument was, if you side with Devin, then you too are evil. And it's like, no. We're saying your tactic was out of line, unnecessary.
It was off-putting, and it made her look petty. It just made her look petty and made her look vindictive, and I didn't get the justification for it. So there's two pieces of information that we do get clarity on. So the first is the gift. So there was the whole incident where they got a gift and he didn't mention it to her, and the details were unclear. We do find out that they received the gift 3 days in advance. His statement was that it was a gift. He was just holding it until the wedding. He didn't really think much of it, which is a very guy statement. I can't say that I would have done anything different. And she learned, I believe it was from his mother.
Hey, my boss gave you guys $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. And she's using this as justification for him being shady. Now we learn a new piece of information, and that is there was a note from an ex-girlfriend, supposedly, that she found next to the bed the night before the wedding. Okay. This person happens to be the guest or the plus one of somebody in the wedding party.
Mm-hmm.
He considers it somebody that is a good friend, and they only, according to him, tangentially dated very briefly a long time ago, and it doesn't even consider it an ex because it was so inconsequential. Okay, I don't know what the truth is here, but the reality is, what did that letter say? Again, another fall down on Nick and Vanessa. What did the note say? Did the note really say what Devin claims? And that is, hey, I'm really proud of you. I'm happy for you. If that's what the note said, and they have been friends, and Virginia has met this person on numerous occasions and has been able to see the dynamic, then this again kind of looks like a petty situation. If it just feels like Virginia's actively trying to
again,
dig
it's confirmation bias, right? She's using that right alongside the check to say he's not trustworthy, there's a lack of transparency, and he's not forthcoming, and here are my two example, exhibit A and exhibit B.
Yep. I mean, look, on the topic of the gift, I would have taken that gift. I would have thrown, we had a like a bird cage style thing for our gifts. I would have taken that thing, thrown it in the bird cage, and not thought about it again until it was time to open gifts. I would have never mentioned it to you. And it would have just, if somebody said, hey, where's the gift? I'd say it's in the bird cage. That's what I would have said.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know. I also think it would have been, if you had come up to me and said, oh, hey, my mom's boss gave us a check for $1,000.
Would you look at me weird and be like, what, why?
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
well, first off, I mean, I would, if somebody came up to me and that's what they were telling me was talking about gifts before the wedding, I would find that off-putting. Like, what are we doing this for?
Yeah. I think what also adds maybe to this layer of mad, and maybe why she's kind of coming back with her, pitchfork or whatever, is because she has heard from the other women, who I don't actually find to be particularly trustworthy, that Devin is telling everyone that Virginia ghosted him. And I think that she's wrapped up in this narrative that she now looks bad, so she needs to make him look worse. And I think that's what this is about. She's concerned.
Everybody ghosts everybody. Nobody cares.
Again, she broke up with him.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't understand. You don't get to have it both ways. I'm sorry. Breaking up with a person is really difficult. And the person that gets broken up with does have a little bit of, leeway in terms of acting and reacting however they need to. Like, you broke up with him in front of all of your friends and family, and he cried like a baby. He gets to not, respond to your phone calls. And in his mind, and what he had said was, well, whenever we talked, it was just like this. And so what was the point, was essentially his take. And I just, yes, would it be the more mature thing for him to have said, you know what, Virginia, this isn't going anywhere. I think we just need to cease contact. Sure. Who amongst us is that graceful when we are feeling hurt and rejected? I don't know. That's maybe the most idealized version of ourselves that we can conjure up. But I think that is what caused all of what we're seeing here, is that she needs to feel vindicated in that he was wrong in all of this and she was right.
Yeah. I mean, the entire thing, and again, kind of theme for the entire episode, is it felt like the women needed to get their stories out there, and they just needed to be right and needed people to be on their side. And the men came to this thing being like, I just want this to be over, and I don't actually care. Just like, I'm just going to say nothing because I just want this to all be over.
The women did too much, like if she had come in and said, and they just like, yeah, I ended it. I really, I know we had a difference of opinion about how much difference between us could have worked and could not. I love him, wish him well. She would have looked like an all-star. She
would have looked mature, and she would have fed into the narrative that she is significantly more mature than Devin. What we're coming away with is that Virginia sucks and Devin sucks, and they're both immature, and neither one of them are ready and prepared really for a relationship. Neither one of them demonstrated that they have the proper mental preparation to take that step.
Yeah, it really wasn't a good look. I don't know if they suck or not, but I just really was not a fan of how, again, she approached this at all.
I've never been a fan of this particular couple. I've thought that they've sort of just, there were two other couples that got engaged that were not chosen to go to Honduras. And I would have really loved to have seen what those other couples could have brought to the season over this couple.
Yeah, same.
Yep. So shall we move over to Ben and Sarah?
Yes. Oh gosh, where to start with Ben and Sarah? So the way that we leave it is that at the altar, she says no. He says, can we still date? She says, we'll see. And then they part ways, and we think that they're broken up.
And in the car, she is just completely shitting all over him to the rest of the family.
Right. And again, the reason that they are breaking up, according to her, is because their beliefs don't align. And she can't...
Massive values misalignment.
Massive values misalignment, core value difference. And she can't possibly be with someone that doesn't challenge her, isn't curious, and doesn't care enough about these things that she cares deeply about. That's what we hear. Get the rally cry going, okay? What we learn is, in fact, that they didn't break up, ? That they lived together for a week or two, that they then planned to go to Nashville together to fulfill her nursing contract.
You don't get both ways, Sarah.
I'm sorry. What? It's just so wild to me because she brought in this Nashville thing as a way to strengthen her case, but it actually made her look, her beliefs watered down even more. So which is it? Did you break up with him because you don't share these core values and you think his values are not good? Or what? Or because he was a shitty boyfriend who didn't come with you to Nashville? I'm confused. And it just, she then, again, similar to Virginia, tried to piece all these things together to say, oh, remember that TikTok? In retrospect, that girl was right because look at what he did to me. And it's, and again,
the claim is he
was manipulative.
Ghosted you? Like what was the manipulation? That he basically ghosted you and, was not the best at breaking up with you. Basically, he was a little bit cowardly when he broke up with you. Newsflash, Ben's a coward, people. He's shown us he's a coward week after week after week.
Coward he looked terrible too. Yeah.
Well, okay. So since you were beating on Sarah, let me throw some punches at Ben.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
I don't like Ben, but I do think that Ben is less hateable than Sarah, at least on the margin. But man, oh man, his white guilt opening speech of privilege was such pandering. It was so off-putting, and it was such a compromise of all of his principles and values. And then he proceeded to double down on this over and over. This was a guy who basically, capitulated on every core principle and value that he attempts to espouse. For what? America is not going to love you. This show is not going to love you, dude. Like, this show is overwhelmingly watched by women. And many of those women, most of them are women who are going to skew aggressively in the feminist direction. You never had a shot coming on the show as a conservative. You were dead on arrival, and now you're going to do this massive pandering. That's what they wanted. But now...
but it's empty.
But it's empty. But two, like, that's what they wanted from you all along. And you gave it to them, and now they're just going to burn you down still. Like, this didn't actually gain you anything.
No.
So you should have stood on principle, dude.
Well, yeah. And I thought that he might have, because I don't know if you caught this, but he was wearing a pretty prominent cross in his,
sure. And it should have burned him while he was speaking.
And so I thought, okay, like, if you were going to get burned, you might as well burn the house down yourself and really stand on your values. No one's, as you said, you have to be smart enough to know you weren't going to walk away in a positive light. There's nothing that you could have done to walk away positively here. And so why not just own it? Just own it. Instead, not only did we get this empty, my privilege, this and that, which again, may be true. Maybe he never did have to think about it because he's not gay and doesn't have many gay people in his life. That's fair and valid. That is how biases happen. That's how implicit bias gets generated. Good. We all know that. And I just, what he kept saying, what he continued to say was, I just don't remember. That was his, if it was not capitulating, it was, his other defense was, I just don't remember.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember what happened. I don't know.
Yes.
Just weak.
Yeah. I mean, so he's just, effectively, he's an unprincipled coward. His speech was nothing more than lip service. And he's a pretty hateable person. And I hope we don't see him again. That being said, Sarah came across exactly how she's come across this entire season, as probably the most hateable person on this entire show. People keep trying to say that Dave is the most hateable person. Based on what metric? Dave is such an obvious caricature of a human being. Like, we know exactly who Dave is.
We all know a Dave.
We all know Dave, and it's just so obvious and so predictable and so sort of like unthreatening in a lot of ways, because it's just like we just know Dave. Sarah, on the other hand, is like an uber kind of threatening individual who's, wildly kind of chaotic in her belief systems, and is aggressive in the promotion of her belief systems. That certainly makes her, by any metric I would use, as a far more hateable individual. And Ben is just a coward. So Ben is clearly, unprincipled cowards are clearly more hateable than just a guy, right? And Dave ultimately is just a guy. That's what he is. Sorry, people. Dave is just a guy.
Yeah, I agree. And especially a guy of a certain age.
Yeah, exactly.
And listen, the Ben and Sarah conversation has been the same conversation since episode 1, whenever we were introduced to them, episode 2. And I'm very happy that it's over. I hope I never see them on my screen again. I hope that they both do a lot of self-reflection and really get into their own values assignment and think about what is actually important to them, and then start to live in their values. And that is developmentally what you are meant to be doing in your late 20s, mid to late 20s, is figuring that out. But where they both miss is consistently standing in their values. And that comes maybe a little bit later in their 30s and into their 40s. That is when we really get to own who we are. And so I wish for them both, since they seem to have lukewarm convictions, that they do that kind of work.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hope I never see either of them ever again.
Wishing you well, though.
All right, Joey and Monica.
Are we a little too harsh? Do we need to take a deep breath?
I think we are being. We might be the only people that are doing recaps who are telling the truth about this show, because everyone else cares about pandering to the audience, and we've just burnt that bridge down episodes ago.
As I said, maybe it was our last recap episode when I was, challenging you a lot. I need to demonstrate what it is that I'm criticizing the contestants for, whatever the cast members for, in being strong in my convictions. I feel like I've never been this forward with the way that I'm feeling. I'm just feeling so frustrated again with this season, and I think just this idea that we are being fed and sold a narrative where it's making me almost like put my back up to the wall in a way. And these are beliefs that I believe in. And so that they've put me in a place where I feel like I need to challenge it in such a way is mind blowing to me. That's, I think, what is so frustrating to me about this season. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Joey and Monica.
So this, I think, is probably the most interesting couple from, kind of online land, right? Because, and I don't have social media, so what I get is very sort of tangential and sporadic. But it sounds to me like everybody now thinks that Joey is a liar and a villain. And he might be. I don't know. I don't have enough information because Nick and Vanessa are terrible hosts. But there's at least the foundation being formed that he might be a liar and a villain. But let's pause on that for a second, and we'll come back to it. Monica, what the hell was that? I mean, I have loved Monica throughout this entire season, and she burned that to the ground.
I know. I just said to you, you have such a strong Monica bias.
I do not understand what she's been doing for the last year, why she is so angry, and like, there were so many things. Go ahead.
So here's part of. Let me answer that partly for you. A lot of her anger is at herself. She feels embarrassed. As she said, she watched this back and she kept looking at this girl on the TV and saying, he's not into you. He doesn't like you. And she feels mad at herself, embarrassed, ashamed that she didn't see it, or maybe a part of her did see it and she proceeded. So I think that's a really big part of, especially the beginning of what she was saying was, I don't know how I didn't see this, that he was just never into me. And that's something I've said from the beginning. They're friends. They're not, I don't think he's into her. And I think that there is a part of just projection that is going on. But I do think that she owned that in her own way. But I think because of the tone and the delivery that she gave, it's easy.
And the snarky faces and stuff like that.
Yeah. But so I think that she can also feel angry that he sort of led her on in a way, though in my opinion, they both weren't mutually validating to one another. They both weren't giving physical affection one another. And so he kind of was like a dead fish. Like he did the least. And And so it wasn't like, if we're to compare this to Grant Ellis's season of The Bachelor, his biggest criticism on the Women Tell All was that he was too affirming, too validating, and he led these women on to the point where they were all the theme of the tell all was I was blindsided. Joey did none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I can't necessarily criticize him so much, because it wasn't, as far as we saw and as far as we heard from Monica and Joey, that he didn't actually come out and say, I'm going to marry you. I love you. They're not having sex. None of that.
Mm-hmm.
All he was consistent in saying, I don't know what I'm going to do until I get up to the altar. That's the only promise that he made her. And so there is a part of me that's like, we can only blame Joey but so much, because he was essentially honest in his inaction the entire time.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And that's why I'm really questioning this. Is Joey a liar in a villain situation? I mean, I don't think we have enough information based on the sliding into the DMs thing to make that, we could talk about that in a second. But based on just his behavior on the show, he wasn't hiding the ball. He was at all times respectful and nice to Monica. And okay, so he wasn't actually into you. Like, you don't know his heart and his intentions. Maybe he was really trying to get there and just couldn't get there, right? But at the same time, as you point out, Monica also wasn't giving him a lot back either. So I also, I watched the season, and she's talking about feeling like she was slapped in the face and feeling embarrassed. I feel like that's a little dramatic. I didn't watch that show, and I am a very critical watcher, as we all know. And I wasn't watching that show being like, oh man, that Monica, what a fool she is. No, she's, going through the process, and maybe she's not seeing everything, that Joey's laying on the table, but it was nothing to be embarrassed or felt slapped in the face about. And that's sort of my problem here is why don't you just relax a little and give it some perspective?
Well, here's the thing, and this is the downfall with this episode being filmed a year ago and aired now, is that for all we know, for the last 9 months, that's how she has felt. And now she's gotten this new information from Madison that he has slid into her DMs. And now she's looking back at everything from the past and everything that she's seeing through that lens of, he was never into me. He was only here for fame, only here to meet other women. And so I think that she's reconstructing the narrative based on this new information that he was sliding into other cast members' DMs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure. But let's talk about that for 10 seconds. So apparently he slides into other cast members' DMs. We know about Madison. Now,
of course, it's Madison.
Madison is a troublemaker. We all know that. She demonstrates that repeatedly throughout this episode. At no point in time do we ever find out who the other people are. He says he reached out to a whole bunch of former cast members after that event. Again, if you came back and asked him, okay, who are the other cast members? Or what were the sexes, numbers of each of the sexes? And he came back and said, oh, it was 3 and 3, or 2 and 4, or 4 and 2. And Madison just happened to be one of those. Suddenly it doesn't look so bad anymore, right? It's the fact that, again, we know that Vanessa is always, sort of trying to bury the guys. She's done it every season I've ever watched of this. And so the question's not getting asked. And Nick, Nick's a simp. We know that. And so the question's just not getting asked. But that information is relevant here, because that tells me whether he's actually a villain or not. If it's he reached out to 3 girls, Joey, you're a villain. If it's I reached out to 5 guys and 1 girl, Joey, that doesn't look very good. Maybe not a villain, but doesn't look very good. If it's I reached out to 3 girls and 3 guys, I'm sorry, that shows a symmetry, and that he really is just a guy who cares about checking in on people. Right.
Well, and I think the other piece of the context that is relevant is that they both, Madison and Joey both maintain we had a friend connection in the pods. Mm-hmm. There was no romantic connection in the pods. It's possible that when Joey saw her, thought she was hot, and then the idea of the friend connection changes for him. But I think that that's also relevant. It's not like she was his number 2, or it came down to Madison and Monica. Mm-hmm. Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah.
There's so many M names.
So many M's. We got more to go. We got 3 more to go.
But I think the context matters. Where I think that I was getting a little lost in the sauce was when Joey was apparently telling Monica that Madison was coming on to him. And I don't really know what the purpose of that was.
We didn't really get enough of the actual storyline. It was really just sort of a jumbled mess in terms of like who said what and when. And at no point in time were they ever able to really like give us a good chronological timeline of exactly what happened there. The one thing I do, I've sort of, I feel like I'm defending Joey, and I'm not. I'm trying to look at it objectively from like, what do we actually know, and what piece of information are missing for us to make a proper assessment. But the one piece of information that we haven't really addressed, and I do think is bad for Joey here, is that the text messages did come a week before the wedding. And look, even if it was a 3-and-3, 3-guy, 3-girl DM, message, I still don't know if sending those text messages out a week before your wedding, it's just a bad look.
I agree.
Even if it, and again, if it's 3-and-3, I don't think that there's any foul play to be suggested. I think it's pretty clear it's what Joey said. But there's just still optics, right? And I say it all the time. Men and women cannot be friends. Women can be friends with men. Men cannot be friends with women. That's not a thing that can happen. So all of you women out there, if you think you have male friends, know that you are their friend. They are not your friend. And that is just the biological reality. And so once you put a ring on someone's finger, the only female friends that you have are the wives of your real friends or your wife's friends. That's it. Those are your female friends. Everybody else is no longer a friend. At most, they're an acquaintance or a coworker. Somebody you might see at a party, and that's it. And that's just, people don't like that reality. But that is reality. There's no way around that, unfortunately. And Joey clearly doesn't know that yet. And that's a bit of a problem for him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Anything else we want to talk about on Joey and Monica?
No, I think let's move on to the next couple, Dave and Lauren.
Okay, so before you talk about them, can I just say, I am so tired of talking about this couple. I'm tired of this couple in general. I'm so disinterested in the couple. I think everybody has the narrative of this couple wrong. And I just want everything related to Dave and Lauren to just be over and end. So go ahead.
Well, no, we don't need to go through the play-by-play because to your point, it's the same scenario over and over. We only learn maybe one new piece of information, but that's about it. You tell us how we're all getting the narrative wrong.
Okay. This was on script for Dave. This was all predictable. I might have edited out of a podcast, but I can go back and get the raw footage. I said this like a month ago. Dave knew the entire time that this relationship was not real. He knew the entire time that this guy, the situationship guy was not. It was not an actual relationship. He was using it as a crutch. We all knew eventually he would have to come back out and admit that he was wrong. And the reunion was going to probably be the time where it made sense for him to admit that he was wrong. And now it's far enough away from the relationship where he doesn't have to like go back with Lauren, right, at this point, because it's been a year and he gets to look like, oh, sheepish. Oh, yeah, I was just taken as a fool. He wasn't. He knew the entire time that this guy was just a fame chaser. He knew that he and Lauren had nothing, but a situationship going on. This was all orchestrated. There was a whole bunch of podcasts that came out, way bigger podcasts than ours, the type of podcasts that get guests from these shows on them. And they were saying things like, I don't think Dave is particularly smart, but I'm actually sort of like feeling a little bad for him, or I'm sort of like a little more sympathetic to Dave's case because, now that we see that he really was taken by this guy. It's like, I'm sorry, all of you thinking that, you're idiots. He is that smart. He is that manipulative, and you've all fallen for it. This was all predictable, and it's boring. Because we knew this was the arc. This was exactly what we knew was going to happen a month and a half ago. Now on to Lauren. Lauren is still delusional. Lauren still thinks they had a great connection. They didn't. She still thinks they left Honduras in this fantastic spot. You didn't. Right? And she did the disingenuous, call to action where, everybody should stop doing online hate to Dave, trying to take the moral and ethical high ground. But it's like, I don't care. I don't believe you. I'm not interested. You're delusional. He's fake. I just so over it all. Am I being unfair?
I think you're being really unfair to Lauren. I've come away from Lauren, and granted,
when she took the emotional maturity high ground, that's where she lost me in this conversation. I was like, oh God, you think you have the emotional maturity high ground in this? I just don't see it. You haven't demonstrated that. I think people are telling you that online. Those people are inclined towards your direction. I'm not seeing it from any of the actions that I've watched throughout the season.
Listen, I again, we try to stay within the four corners of the show when we're here, but I do want to say that I just listened to an interview with her about their relationship and breakup and whatnot, and it does seem like she has gained some self-awareness and has reflected on this in a different way. And so I thought the way, again, out of all the women, I think that she did the best job. I don't think that she went low. I don't think that she got petty. I think that she did this very well. I was happy when, Dave lobbed in the very empty, you're the one that got away.
Well, no. He was set up. That's one of those
thing.
Yeah, that's one of those, like, when did you stop beating your wife type questions. Like, there's no good answer to it. And so he just lied again. Mm-hmm. Like, of course that was a lie.
Right.
But Vanessa also shouldn't have even asked him that question, because it was a dumb question to ask him.
I agree. It was an unfair question to ask. And, good on Lauren to say, like, I don't believe you. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the thing that I can appreciate about Lauren, is that she was trying to hold him accountable here. And that in some ways that was what needed to happen. And so I was satisfied with that. I was satisfied with that ending. And I also agree with you in terms of this narrative about Dave. When I say that Dave walked away, again, they won the night, it's because most people have garnered sympathy for him. But if you listen to what he said, he maintains the same stance as he did when we saw this getting filmed a year ago. Mm-hmm. My friends and family didn't want me to do that, didn't want me to, introduce Lauren to them. My sister, wanted this. Like, he really can't own his actions. He took no responsibility.
He was also very contradictory.
Yeah.
Still, you can't reconcile all the contradictory statements. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was just, again, more of the same. But again, as a broken up couple, they walked away the winners.
I agree. Look, I don't disagree that of all of the couples, these two at least played nice in the sandbox and came across at least with some semblance of at least on Lauren's part, some semblance of dignity. Whereas, Sarah, Virginia, and Monica left with no dignity.
Well, and one could argue that Lauren and Dave actually had the most dramatic breakup.
Oh, yeah.
As compared to the others.
Yeah. Oh.
And so the fact that they can come back and be civil about it, and maybe a part of what takes down the weight of their breakup is that they didn't go to the altar, mm-hmm. and that they didn't, kind of have that rejection happen in front of their families. Maybe that's what makes it different. But their breakup was the messiest and the most emotional in some ways. And
also the most predictable,
but also most relatable to the audience. Mm-hmm. And yet they were able to navigate this really well.
Well, I wonder if the relatability is part of the reason why it was so easy to navigate. Well, easy is wrong. While they were able to navigate and others weren't, is because their situation is an everyday situation. Yeah. Everybody watching this podcast, everybody watching this show has either been Dave or been Lauren, mm-hmm. right? And in some cases, been both of them, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. At different times. And so we've all gone through this exact breakup. And so in some ways, it's almost an easier thing to experience and to get through because of your past experiences, mm-hmm, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's fair. So intertwined in the Dave and Lauren of it all, we have Molly.
Of course we do. So can I just say, Molly, the frustrating thing about Molly is that she's basically discount Madison at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Madison is so desperate to get involved in everything. She is interjecting throughout the entire night. I was there. Come talk to me. I heard it, right? And Molly's like, oh, yeah, me too. And it's just like the whole time she's just sitting next to Madison and just following Madison around like a puppy dog. And it was sort of pathetic in a lot of ways. It's grow your own personality, grow your own like storyline. Like, what are we doing here? And so I couldn't really follow what she was actually adding in terms of value if all she was going to do was be Madison's, sort of like sidekick, mm-hmm. for all of her interjections. Mm-hmm. Am I being unfair?
No.
Wow, I got to know. That's like the first time in weeks you've said no. I'm on the record. I don't like Molly. I don't like Madison. I've said it all along.
Who did you like this season?
Nobody. I like nobody this season. I like Daniel. Daniel's a little too high diddly ho for me, but like he's basically the only guy I liked, I think, in this entire season. In terms of the women, I liked Monica until tonight. I'm completely out on Monica at this point. I liked Taylor. So I guess Daniel and Taylor are literally the only two. I thought for the most part they were all pretty bad. Although let's talk about the quad, shall we?
Okay.
Because I do think that Megan's stock rose. Meg's stock. Does she go by Megan or Meg? Meg. Yeah.
Her name is Margaret.
Oh, that's right. It's Margaret. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay, so basically the quad of Alex, Madison, Mason, and Meg.
Oof. That's
a tongue twister. Meg and Mason are now very good friends. They attempted to date, didn't really work out. Alex appears to be on friendly terms with both Meg and Mason. The three of them were very clearly a unit, a unified unit.
Against Madison. And
Madison and Molly were the unified unit on the other side. Kind of the storyline we get from Alex is that as on the watch back, he is surprised by how different Madison was in the dates. He's a pretty, we'll say, proper guy. So he didn't take any shots about that. He just left it at, it was noticeable how different she was based on the person she was talking to. Here's the thing that I don't know how I feel about it. So Meg is sitting between Alex and Mason. And Meg was very clearly the attack dog. These guys all know that they're getting a bad edit. They just have to shut their mouths and say nothing, take whatever beating they're going to take, and then just get out of there and forget the show ever existed. But these two guys brought Meg. And Meg was basically able, because women can do whatever they want on this show and face no repercussions, right? And so Meg was able to square off against Madison and take all the heat off of them. And now these two, despite their mistakes they may have made, which Alex, I don't think made very many mistakes on the show. And Mason, we think, made a ton of mistakes on the show. But like, there really wasn't a lot of focus on that because Meg squaring off in defense of these two men at Madison just sort of like took all the fire away from them.
Right. Because Madison's whole, agenda, her whole monologue was about Mason being manipulative and Alex being fake. And, Mason was able to say, like, no, you manipulated me and you also manipulated the situation with Meg. And then Meg was able to, double down and reinforce. Yeah, like I'm the victim here, Madison, not you. It's me. And I thought
when she pointed out that she was the one who got screwed over by everybody.
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful moment because she's like, all of you screwed me over and I've picked a side. I've picked one side among the people who screwed me over. So that has to lend some weight as to who was most versus least culpable in this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the funniest line of that section was when Madison called Mason manipulative and he was like, well, I take that as a compliment that you think I'm smart enough to be manipulative because he is an idiot. That's what we said the whole time. Yeah. Like he was just so not good he was trying to be Dave, but could not achieve it. And Madison definitely was the puppeteer the entire time.
Yep. So the reason why I said before, I'm not sure how I feel about this is because on the one hand, it's very smart of Alex and Mason to bring Meg. That they used Meg in that way. I also find it a little bit cowardly, right? Bringing somebody else in to fight your battles. But it's also smart because it was an unwinnable battle. So I'm sort of like on the fence of like, I still think you're idiots for going on this show. And I guess if you were already made the mistake of going on the show and you are committed to going on this event, then at this point, like, going in and just getting roasted, in the edit is probably just as dumb as it is cowardly to bring in some woman to fight your battle for you. That being said, I also do have questions about Meg. feels like a very manipulatable person.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a possibility, and I have no evidence of this, I am simply hypothesizing potential intents. Is it possible that Mason knew what he was walking into and has been spending the last year being buddy-buddy with Meg, in preparation?
That would be very tinfoil hat of you.
That would be very tinfoil hat. And that would indicate that Mason is a
actually,
genius.
Yeah, manipulative. I mean, do I think there's a part of him that knows, having Meg and I aligned is going to be helpful? Mm-hmm. Sure. I think that he plotted since they left LA, all the leading up to this for the entire year, to just stay close to her so that she could be his attack dog, here in March 2025. That would be real maniacal. I just don't think he's that smart. I really don't.
Yeah, because he went on the show.
But I do think that
we know the upper bounds of his IQ.
But I do think that Meg is kind of a loyalist, and I could see her just being like, "Yeah, I got your back." Like I could just see her being so on board to defend Mason that he didn't necessarily dissuade her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the last, I think, relevant piece that happened in this quad.
Relevant is
that's a strong word.
Thing that happened.
Yes. Okay. So Madison is trying to gin up all of these stories and innuendo, and she's trying to basically lure people into the trap of saying something so that she can pull out these text messages that suggest that Alex is this awful person who's shit talking everybody. And she pulls out these text messages and she starts to read these text messages. And I had the same response to these text messages that I had to the Bachelor social media confrontation between Carolina and Dina. I was like, huh? What? I don't understand.
This was embarrassing.
Why is any of this relevant?
Why is the skull emoji so damning?
Yeah. Basically, these text messages were him relaying things that are happening with Meg and Mason, not saying anything negative about it, except for some LOLs, which are a pretty indifferent thing, and a handful of emojis, which, okay, like a skull emoji, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not hip to the emoji game.
It's like dead,
but
LOL, like that kind of
yeah,
idea.
I'm sorry. You could pull out any one of my text messages to anybody, and you're going to find more hateful stuff than that.
I mean, what this did was
it proved she had nothing. If she had anything,
it made her.
Showed it.
It made her lack all credibility. Mm-hmm. It made her look very much like she is wanting to be the center of attention, and it made her look like she was wanting that the central narrative to be that she is the victim. Mm-hmm. And that was embarrassing. It was hard to watch because she wanted all of us to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And so I was someone who...
But if you're on this show and you are a female and you can't get a crowd gasp in the live studio audience, then you are really, really
I'm
off.
Surprised that they showed that, given how weak it was and how it seems like, again, they're really wanting to push forward Madison. Mm-hmm. That was again, embarrassing.
Yep.
Like, talk about emoji.
People gave me shit for my dislike of Madison.
No, I wrote hard for Madison at the beginning.
Yeah, I feel very vindicated, right? I feel very vindicated.
It felt like she weaponized therapy speak in order to push her narrative forward. And as a therapist, that really bothers me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really tired of the whole oh, everyone just wants me for my body and my looks. But meanwhile, I'm going to lead every conversation with sexuality. It's like, I don't believe you. And like, I didn't believe you at the beginning of the season. And now post receipts, I really feel like everybody else has now just come to the same conclusion that I had after like week 2. And that is, you're just not a believable person. It seems like everything you're doing is a game to get attention. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not into it. I'm not into it, not interested.
I agree.
So that kind of rounds out what we get with the couples. We do get some top 5 moments. Quite frankly, didn't care, not interested. We did get some other random events. They bring AD back. Don't care, not interested. I am happy that this year they only brought, I think, AD back. Mm-hmm. Whereas last year it was brutal. It just kept bringing people back and going to the crowd. And it was just way too long. I still feel like this episode was longer than it needed to be, but it wasn't season 7 finale is what I'll say. Season 7 finale reunion was really bad.
This was way more entertaining than the Women Tell All that we watched.
The Women Tell All was a hard watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought as far as reunions went, this was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure if you got Bachelor and Love Is Blind going head to head with a Women Tell All and a reunion in the same week, basically dropping a day apart from one another, Love Is Blind definitely won this round. Even if Bachelor season 29 overwhelmingly won the season for the night, you know, I think it goes to Love Is Blind.
Well, we did it. We got through season 8 of Love Is Blind.
I could not be more happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I no longer have to continue with the resentment of you being like, hey, it's a long weekend and 3 episodes dropped. Let's do a recap podcast on Love Is Blind.
Yeah. It also wasn't really a great time in our lives to add another podcast recording to the list. This is a very busy time of year.
And when they're dropping 3.5 to 4 hours of episodes on you at a time, it was a
commitment, which is why subscribing actually means a lot. And we really appreciate it. And, you know, this is something that we don't necessarily get paid for, but we enjoy doing. And so your, you know, like and your subscribe is your kind of way to let us know that what we're doing matters. A little bit. So thank you. We will be back to complete Grant Ellis's season of The Bachelor. We have Fantasy Suites coming up next week. So if you're watching The Bachelor along with us, we will see you there. You can continue to follow us at Reactivity TV on Instagram. You can follow me at Amy Albero LCSW. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Goodbye.